Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Ashlyn, and having your first child can be nerve-wracking, chaotic, stressful, create a little bit of anxiety and sometimes some fear. But it can also be so beautiful and so exciting, and something that a lot of people really look forward to. I feel like there is not enough videos talking about what to expect, not even just in pregnancy and labor and childbirth, but that year of getting to know yourself as a parent and your new child that you brought into this world. I'm going to share some tips and some tricks what to expect in that first year of life, using my personal experiences as a way to kind of guide us through that. By no means is my journey going to mirror anyone else's exact journey. Everyone's baby and pregnancy and labor and delivery and postpartum and that first year is going to look so different because everybody, including the child, as soon as they're conceived, are so unique to their own self, their own being. But there's this concept that I learned while I was pregnant that I kind of want to round this video around, and that is to learn a little bit about everything so that you can be prepared, because you never know what's going to happen. I know that I was very scared of tearing during labor, just for like an example, and I was able to find some tools and tips and tricks to help me prepare for that. I also learned how to care for myself in case that did happen, and that took so much stress and so much anxiety out of my body and out of my mind so that I could be more present and positive in this whole entire experience. With that being said, this is your sign to learn a little bit about everything and start with your fears. If you're scared of having a C-section, or you want to have a home birth and you're scared of having a transfer, do a little bit of research about these things and how you can care for yourself if these things do happen and what to expect so that you are prepared. I wouldn't say dive deep and go down a rabbit hole into something that is causing you to have some fearful emotions, but definitely prepare yourself and set yourself up for success in case that does happen. Give yourself a little bit of insurance, and it might be able to help you drop more into the moment and not have to worry about the what ifs that come along with pregnancy and labor, birth, delivery, and the first year of raising your child. I always see videos of like what to expect when you're expecting and what to expect in the first year. Yeah, you're gonna be tired. If you choose to breastfeed, that's gonna pretty much be your whole life. You're gonna be learning yourself and how to care for this little one, and learning them and what they like and what they don't like. Learning your partner. If you're doing this with a partner, you're doing this by yourself, you're going to learn a lot about the people who you're around. Self-care, hormones, emotions, the bounce back. There's so many things that people talk about, but they don't talk about the certain experiences that happen over time. For me, pregnancy was very rough. It was challenging, but I was so excited to have this little being inside of me. I was very optimistic from the day that we found out, and I was so ready to be a mama. A little background story, I was a nanny for about 4 or 5 years full-time, so like 40 to 50 hours a week for 4 or 5 years straight. It was pretty intense, but I was like, I know I want to be a mom. This showed me that I have what it takes to care for and keep children alive, and I really enjoyed spending time with the kiddos and teaching them and helping them learn how to be a little human, and it was so heartwarming to be a part of that. And I was the first one to say, I'm going to be such a great mom. I know what to do. I know how to keep a child alive. I know how to do this, but I also got to go home every single day, take a break from it. I got to wake up in the morning and have my own routine and have my own little life on the side. I'm gonna tell you now, I used to be that person that said, you know, I could be a great mom because I was a nanny. But I will be the first person to tell you, being a mom and being a nanny or a babysitter or working in a daycare or whatever you may call it, it's two totally different worlds. There's so many more emotions. It's so much more intense and frustrating and beautiful and loving and deep. And I was in for it. I was definitely in for it. On January 16th, 2021, at 6:18 a.m., my little bundle of joy was born. Cooper Elliott Sage, we love him so much. He's such an incredible kiddo. He's going to be 1 in literally an amount of days, I think like 7 days or something like that, 8 days. It is surreal how fast they grow. He was 7 pounds, 9 ounces. I labored for about 8 hours at home. Everybody's labor time is going to be different, but I do have to say, if you're pregnant and watching this and you're wondering, how can I have a quick labor? How can I keep my labor going? I would say keep moving. Don't lay down. Don't sit down. Stay hydrated. Bounce on the ball. Get on hands and knees when you feel the contractions coming. I swear, hands and knees is what kept my labor progressing as fast as it did. I swear by it. I know that for some people it's not going to work the same as it worked for me, but I feel like it worked incredibly to keep the labor moving and keep him moving down and keep everything going and progressing the way that it needed to. And then we went to my birth center, which I had Cooper at the Birth Center of Boulder. Highly recommend. They are an incredible group of midwives. They took great care of me. I can't say enough good things about them. When I got to the birth center, I was about 8.5 to 9 centimeters. I was almost there, so I got in the birth tub and I labored in there. And then we did a couple of other things, and he was here 4 hours after that. But my labor lasted about 12 hours in total from like start to finish, which some people may say it was super quick. Some people may say that's a long time compared to mine. Like I said, everybody's super different. But my tip for labor and birth is to go into it being empowered and knowledgeable about what kind of experience that you want to have, what tools that you want to use during your labor, if you want to have an epidural or not, if you want your husband to catch your baby or not, if you want them to cut the cord right away or not. Going into labor and going into your birth, being knowledgeable and having boundaries set, even if you have to type it up in paper, print out like 5 copies to give to the whole entire birth team, do that. I definitely fell into like the deep labor realm, and I was just there with my son and we were doing the work, and I honestly feel like I blacked out for part of my birth. Like there's parts of it I don't remember. I'm still kind of processing things, and sometimes things will come to me, but you want to make sure that the people around you know, even if you can't use your voice, even if you're in pain or you prefer for it to be silent, you still want people to know what you want, what to not ask you for, what to ask you. I could do a whole nother video on how to prepare for your labor and your birth to try to work towards the best outcome of what you want and what you're envisioning. If you'd like me to make a video like that, let me know down below. But yeah, that is where it all began, having my son on January 16th, 2021. And yes, I do believe that pregnancy is the start of parenthood, but once they're here, that's when everything begins and starts to become real life. Bringing our little tiny human home was so surreal. I feel like I remember it like it was yesterday. The first like 5 to 6 weeks of postpartum and having him home with us was just amazing. It was incredible. Tyler was home with me. I know having a baby during a pandemic isn't like the best thing ever, but it was in the sense that Tyler was able to stay home and be with us, and I feel like that really set the space for me to be able to heal and take baths and make sure I'm eating and having space away. So yeah, the first month was just bliss, and we were just enjoying our little baby boy. There was a couple hiccups that I do want to talk about because it's something that I wasn't prepared for, that I wish I would have been prepared for. We did have jaundice, and he had to do a home treatment for like 2 days. It wasn't too terrible, but it was on the brink of like he's gonna need treatment and he's not gonna need treatment. I'm so thankful that we were able to treat him at home because I did not want to take him to the hospital. If you watch my other videos and you're familiar with me and my channel, you know that I try to do things as naturally and holistic and balanced as possible. If we would have had to take him to the hospital and get him these treatments for jaundice, we would have. But trust me when I say I was trying everything. Like, please give me all of the alternative options that are within reason and like that are realistic for us to do. And they ended up having a home treatment jaundice little machine that we put him in. I'll try to find a photo and put it on the screen if I can. But that is something that was totally unexpected, and I was very emotional and caught off guard. I had to draw his blood a couple times on his foot, and that is just so traumatic as a mama. Some people can handle it. I was one of those people that like I cried with him. It was something I don't wish on any mama, and I wish that I would have been prepared for that. I wish I would have had a little bit of education on that. And that was really the start of like, this is real. I am so in love with and connected to and bonded to this little human. All I want is for him to be healthy and happy, and this sucks. Like, it's a struggle when things happen to your little tiny baby that you just had. I believe that this happened with a jaundice scare when he was like 2 weeks old. It's just something to be prepared for. Just being prepared for little things like jaundice, or maybe your child needs a little bit of oxygen when they come out. Whenever Cooper was born, they had to pump him with a little bit of oxygen because they said he had some phlegm stuck and he like couldn't get it out. It wasn't like a traumatic or like a scary or like mayday, mayday type of situation. They were very calm and collected, and they knew what they were doing. But I feel like if it wasn't like that and it was in like a hospital setting, or it was a little bit more of an intense setting and I didn't know what was going on, it would have been really scary to see that, and it would have been very stressful. That pretty much concludes like the first month of postpartum, the fresh, right out of the womb, fresh mother who just gave birth. Again, I want to mention that if you are scared of some things pertaining to labor or birth, like pain management, and maybe you want to use a birthing tub during your labor. Maybe you want a water birth, maybe you're scared of tearing, maybe you're scared of getting an epidural but you need one. I highly recommend and encourage you to do your own research and kind of look up different ways of preventing certain things from happening, because there is a lot of preventative things that you can do to make you have a smoother, less complicated labor and birth. Sometimes things happen and it just is what it is, but I know that a lot of things are preventable if you take the right action steps and the right precautions. So give yourself the tools to prevent these things from happening. Give yourself a little bit of education. Give yourself a little bit of knowledge of how to take care of yourself and how to support yourself if these things do happen, and make up a little plan. I promise you that you will be less stressed and more confident in your labor and your birth if you kind of go over these things and acknowledge these things. And you don't have to do them alone either. A lot of the time your midwife or your doctor will be more than happy to discuss these things with you and go over them and help you create a game plan so you don't have to do it by yourself. So like I said, the first month was bliss. It was awesome, and that's kind of where things started to hit the fan during month 2. So I don't even really know where to start with like the conversation about my gallbladder, because I don't want to babble too much about it, but I really feel like I had no idea that this was something that could happen after birth. I had no idea that this is something that I could have prevented with my diet and maybe like lessening certain things and including more things. And I wish I would have, which is why I definitely want to touch on it. So at the end of the first month, I think Cooper was like 3 weeks old or 4 weeks old, I had a gallbladder attack, and it was pretty intense. It was definitely uncomfortable and painful. It lasted like a whole night. We definitely weren't eating the healthiest. You know, we had a put in the oven pizza for dinner, and I just thought, you know, my belly was upset. It was not happy. I had a lot of cramping, and I called my midwife. She said it was probably constipation, which is normal whenever you first give birth in those first few months. It was definitely not constipation. I was having a gallbladder attack. I didn't know it. I kind of played it off. I took a bath, I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning and I was fine. A few weeks go by, my birthday goes by, I turn 24. Everything is going really well. We're getting to know Cooper. He had his first little holiday, which was Valentine's Day, and it was pretty smooth sailing. I was definitely dealing with some postpartum emotions, but it wasn't anything too intense at this point. And around 7 weeks, I had another gallbladder attack, which ended me up in the ER. It was probably the most painful thing I had ever experienced in my life. I thought I was dying. I thought something inside of me was dying. It was not a very good experience, and I was just so caught off guard by this. I had just had my little baby. I wasn't expecting for my body to literally start like shutting down and attacking itself. And I was trying my best to keep my emotions composed and taking care of myself, and this just seemed like such a huge mountain that I couldn't climb. Luckily, I had my husband and my family and his family. They were all supporting me and being so kind and so loving and so generous. This was the start of a really, really dark time for me. I was scared, I was confused, I was sad. My relationship with my body wasn't always great, so having this happen right after I had a baby, right after I was just so obsessed with my body and thankful, which it wasn't that I wasn't obsessed and thankful for my body when I was having this gallbladder issue, but I had worked so hard for probably like 3 or 4 years previous to getting pregnant to like my body and to feel good in my body and to find a balance of what I needed to eat and exercise and how I needed to take care of myself to actually feel good. I've just always had issues with my body. It's actually a really beautiful thing that I've heard of people having conflicts with their body or their diet and then getting pregnant, and it totally wipes it out, and they're just so grateful and they love their body and they love being in their body, and those things kind of dissipate. And it really felt that way for me. It felt like it just kept getting better and better, and I was just so in love with the process, and like I was in awe of this body and what it did and what it created. To have this happen, and it just felt like the world was crumbling around me, especially having this little 7-week-old baby. I'm in the hospital, had a lot of tests done, and at that point they were kind of just deciding whether it was mandatory for me to get surgery then or I could try a diet and try healing it naturally, which was also a struggle because I tried literally everything. I tried the right diet, I tried different healing herbs and oils and things like that, and it wasn't getting any better. I was still having mini attacks. And then one day I was taking Cooper to Target. We needed to run a couple of errands, and I started having a gallbladder attack on the way home, and I had my baby in the car, and they are debilitating. If you've ever had a gallbladder attack, first of all, I'm sorry. Second of all, you know that it's excruciating. It's kind of similar to having an appendix attack. It's excruciating. It feels like your insides are like eating yourself. I could barely breathe and talk at times. I honestly don't remember a lot from this timeline. I feel like I shut it out. I feel like my body and my mind just don't want to remember it because it was so dark and it was so traumatizing. And this is something I wasn't prepared for. I didn't prepare myself for this. I wasn't even educated that your gallbladder could do this. I think I'm also going to make a separate video on gallbladders and pregnancy and having your gallbladder removed after pregnancy, because the people in the ER and the people where I had my surgery, I eventually had it taken out, which I'll get to. But they said that this is so common for mothers after they have their children, usually after their first or their second. And I'd never heard of that before. I was not prepared for that. I was not prepared for the pain and for the sadness and the confusion and having to have my first surgery ever in my entire life right after I had my son. Feeling like I wasn't being the best mother that I could be, feeling like I wasn't able to be of service and do the things that I needed to get done. It was scary, and that is why I want to talk about it. Like, that is why I want to share my story, and I don't share this to make anyone else scared, because 9 times out of 10 it's not going to happen to you, but it does happen, and there are ways that you can prevent it by eating a healthy diet. I had surgery at the end of March, beginning of April, I believe, and things finally felt as if they were looking up, and I was so grateful. Physically, at least. Things were starting to look up physically, at least. Cooper was really starting to get his personality, and we had went hiking a couple of times, just doing the things that I love, and I was feeling better in my body. But I think that around this time, like 3 or 4 months postpartum, was when I really started to process everything emotionally and mentally and spiritually, which was a whole nother ride in itself. And I'm gonna be honest, from like 3 or 4 months postpartum to 8 months postpartum, it was a roller coaster ride. Not a lot of people know this, but I had really bad postpartum depression and some anxiety as well, and it was rough. I had dealt with anxiety and depression pretty much my whole life, and around the same time that I was really working and healing my body image and my gut health, I was also healing my mind and my soul as well. And through the process of being pregnant and being really sick and having this challenging time and moving across the country, I moved across the country by myself 2.5 months before I got pregnant. And then I got pregnant, and then I had this baby, and then I had a surgery, and it was a lot. I feel like I'm kind of at a loss of words right now, because I'm also just still processing this. I'm sure I'll be processing it for a long time. But these are the moments that, you know, I wasn't really prepared for. You hear of anxiety and depression postpartum being these like things that are totally noticeable, and this person can't get out of bed and they can't eat and they can't sleep and all they do is cry. And while that's a valid case for a lot of women, which I'm so sorry if that's you and if you've went through that, my heart is with you, because I know what you're feeling. I was actually able to get out of bed. I was able to take care of my son and put a smile on my face and have family come visit and act like nothing was wrong, act like everything was fine. Especially with my friends and on social media, it was easy to just cover it up, and then behind the scenes I'd have this rage and this frustration and this sadness and this hatred towards myself that I had never really felt before. I was definitely anxious and depressed in the past, but it was more of a confused and lost, not a worthless like hatred. And I don't mean to be so dramatic and like blunt about it, but that's how I felt, and I wasn't ready for this at all. I do have to say, I didn't take any postpartum classes or pregnancy or birth classes or anything like that, no parenting classes. I'm sure that these will be covered in classes like that, you know, emotions like this and postpartum depression and anxiety, but that's not accessible to everyone. And that's another big reason why I wanted to make this video, because this is a very heavy and intense thing to deal with. And if you don't have other people who are speaking out on this and letting you know that this is not normal, but it's definitely something common that a lot of women go through. And the more that I talk about this and the more that I talk about my experience, the more women are resonating with me, and it feels really good to know that I'm not alone. And I just want you to know that you're not alone. Whether you've dealt with this, whether you are watching this because you're preparing for a pregnancy or you're already pregnant, know that if this happens for you, that you're not alone, and it's also temporary. I don't want to be too dark and dreary about this. I definitely know that I needed those 4 or 5 months to really process everything, let myself feel the feelings, let myself feel the rage. And I think the biggest thing was I had all of these expectations of what I wanted the first year 2 years, 3 years, his whole life to look like. And children are so unpredictable and life is so unpredictable. And when you're not prepared for certain things, it can take a way bigger toll on you than what they have to. I have gotten help and I am feeling so much better. Around that 8-month period is when I really started diving deep back into my yoga, and I felt like I had the energy to get on my mat, and I got a job teaching yoga at a studio, and it started filling up my cup, and I started taking care of myself, and I seen a big difference in how I was feeling, and I'm feeling better now. It definitely did take these last 4 months of working really hard to get to where I am right now, and it's not perfect. I'm still dealing with postpartum depression and anxiety. I'm still dealing with so many hormone imbalances, and I'm trying to work on getting my cycle back to normal and not painful. That's another thing I want to touch on really quick, is that hormone imbalance is a huge thing, and gut imbalance is a huge thing. Whenever you have a child, your whole body is flipped upside down. It knows exactly what to do, and your body and your baby working simultaneously is such a beautiful thing to experience, but it's like your whole body has a reset after, and that's not the case for everybody, but it definitely was the case for me. And so I'm working every day to balance out my hormones and to balance out my gut with probiotics and herbs and tinctures and teas, which I also think that I'm going to make a separate video on, all these separate videos, but I just feel like there's so much to talk about this topic, and I want to share my experience and what's worked for me, because I know that the resources for that information is not accessible to everyone. So now here in like 8 or 7 days, I don't know, I'm trying not to keep track because I'm so emotional about it, and I honestly didn't think I was going to be so emotional and so torn for him turning 1, but that transition from 1 to 2 really is just huge. They go from being your little baby to being this full-blown human, and I wasn't ready for these emotions either. I know that this video was all over the place, but I hope that if you're still watching this, that you got some tips and some tricks and some insight on what to expect, and maybe a better idea of how to create a plan for yourself so that you have as little stress as possible and as much confidence as you can going into birthing your child and living that first year of life together. Whatever your story or your journey looks like through pregnancy and with your labor and your birth and that first year with your child, just remember to be kind to yourself and to be loving and give yourself space to heal, to process everything. If you're struggling, please reach out and get help, whether that's calling a friend that you can trust and talking with them, screaming and punching into your pillow, taking a long bath, getting outside, having an hour away from your child and your household a day if you can, if that's possible. Just really taking that time to take care of yourself, because I feel like that's the biggest takeaway that I want you to have from this video, is to take care of yourself. Make a plan for yourself, do what you need to do to be prepared, and trust your body, your baby, and your journey. Everyone's journey and everyone's child and their journey is beautiful. I am so grateful that I'm able to share mine here on this platform, and I have the space and the time to create videos like this. Even if it may only reach one person and it helps that one person, it's worth it to me. I also feel like this kind of helps me close out this chapter of the first year, being postpartum, having my son, being a mother, parenting with my significant other. It's just so many different things, so many changes, so many challenges, so many beautiful moments all wrapped up in these 365 days after you have your child. Just know that as much as it can be overwhelming, it can also be full of pure bliss and happiness as well, as long as you're taking care of yourself, staying knowledgeable, and living from a space of love. Let me know if you have any more questions or comments, or you want to share parts of your experience. Maybe you went through the same thing as I did and you want to resonate. Please chat with me down in the comments below. If you liked this video and you'd like to see more of these kinds of informational motherhood, pregnancy, etc. type of videos, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to stay notified for when I'm posting new videos. I hope you all have a beautiful week, and I will see you next Monday. Bye!